Hey guys, Mr. T here again. This is on sum and product factorization. Sometimes you cannot factorize a quadratic by removing the common factors. That was a few exercises ago. You can't factorize it by using difference of two squares, another couple of exercises ago. And you can't factorize it using perfect squares, the previous exercise. So once you've run out of those tools there, you've got one remaining tool, which is the sum and product method of factorization. So this is a little trickier, but actually this is one of the most important ones that you can use, because if you try it straight away, you can actually avoid checking the other ones either. This is probably the best one for you to try it first when you want to factorize a quadratic. So if you have a quadratic expression in this form, so notice there's no number in front of the x squared, it's just x squared plus something x, in this case px plus q. It can always be factorized as x plus a and x plus b. Now you're probably wondering where the a and the b come from. They are in relation to p and q here, because p is the sum of whatever the numbers a and b are in these brackets. A and b add up to the number p, and then q is the product of a and b. So a and b multiplied together make q. So you're looking at, this factorization is tricky because you're looking at a pair of numbers a and b that satisfy two things. They add up to this number in front of x, and they multiply to this number, which is the constant term in the quadratic. So I've tried to word it into steps that may make it easier for you. If not, you just need to practice, okay? So step 1, look at the constant term. Actually, I'll scroll back up here. Look at the constant term, which is going to be q. It's a constant term because it doesn't have the variable next to it, so q is always the constant term in the quadratic. Identify the pairs of factors that would multiply to make q. So if this number was, say, 8, what are the factors that would multiply to make 8? 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it, okay? But you have to not forget about negatives as well. So if this q was positive 8, there's also the negative factors that would also make positive 8, because if you times a negative number by a negative number, it becomes positive. So if this was positive 8, it could be negative 1 times by negative 8, and also negative 2 times by negative 4. So please do not forget negatives, because that factors in to when you're trying to find the pair of factors that would add up to p. So after you've decided on the factors that multiply to make q without forgetting negatives, step 2, look at the number p in front of x. Identify a pair of factors from your thinking. You could write it down on the side of your working out from step 1. And identify a pair that would actually add up to the value of p. Also, again, don't forget the negatives. So you have to be careful with your negative numbers to do this properly. The pair of factors that satisfies both 1 and 2 are a and b in this factorization. So once you've found a pair of numbers that multiply to make q and also add together to make p, they are a and b in the brackets here. So you can jump straight to the factorization once you've identified that pair of numbers a and b. So let's show how those steps work. Okay, look at the constant term. The constant term is 16. Identify the pairs of factors that would multiply to make it. So 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. Okay, those are the factors. Also remember that negatives would work here as well, as long as both of them were negative. You couldn't have negative 1 times by 16 because that would make negative 16, and that's not what this is. So I've done 1. I've identified pairs of factors that would multiply to make q. Now I have to look at p, which is 8. Identify a factor pair that would add up to the value of p. Does 1 and 16 add up to 8? No. Does 2 and 8 add up to 16? To 8? No. Does 4 and 4 add up to 8? Yes. So I've identified a factor pair from step 1 that adds up to the value of p. The pair satisfying both 1 and 2 are a and b. So 4 and 4, 4 and 4. So we can jump straight to this x plus a, x plus b. We know that a is 4, and we know that b is also 4. So this is the right answer, but remember that if you are timesing something by itself, it is squared. So it's better to write it fully simplified, okay? So that's the first running of this example. Now let's try one with negative numbers, because that's where the confusion can come from. Okay, so we have this situation where it's just x with no number in front of it. We've got the constant term here. So let's look at the constant term. What are the numbers that can multiply out? What are the factors of negative 32? Now remember, it is negative, so it could be 1 times by 32, and one of those numbers could be negative. It could be 2 times by 16. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 times by 8. 5 doesn't go into it. 6. No, that's it. Okay, now I'm not going to write them out because then this list would be really long, but any of these numbers by itself could be negative. So we need to now look at p, which is negative 4. How am I going to get negative 4 by adding together any of these pairs of numbers? Is there any way I could get negative 4 by doing by involving 1 and 32? If I get negative 1 plus 32, you'll get 31. If I got 1 plus negative 32, you would get negative 31, so no good. What if I did negative 2 plus 16? That would be 14. What if I had 2 plus negative 16? That would be negative 14, so no good either. What if I did negative 4 plus 8? Negative 4 plus 8, that would be positive 4. What if I had 4 plus negative 8? 4 take 8 would be negative 4, which is what p is there. So we know that the pair is going to be 4 and 8, but specifically a is going to be 4 and b is going to be negative 8. And 4 times by negative 8 makes negative 32. So that is a specific pair that's going to factorize into it. So it's going to be x plus 4 and x take 8. And just to check if our factorization was correct, we can FOIL this out and see if we get this answer here. First, x times by x is x squared. Outers is negative 8x. Inners is positive 4x. Lasts is negative 32. X squared, negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4x. Take 32, which is the same. Okay, so that is an example of a trickier sum and product factorization. Hopefully that helps you out, and I will see you in the next video.